Hello and welcome to the 2022 Institute for Arts Integration and STEAM Summit. My name is Katey Shirey and I live in Washington, D.C. I'm a former high school physics teacher and now I help teachers bring engineering, computer science, and art into their classrooms. I am delighted to kick off this summit by talking to you about why arts integration positively impacts student learning. Later, I'll share a planning tool for adapting your existing STEM lessons to meaningful STEAM instruction. Throughout this summit, you're going to hear from dozens of educators about arts integration strategies for the various grades and disciplines that you teach. No matter the grade or subject matter, arts integration increases engagement, learning, and retention, which also leads to increased test scores. I'm here to set the stage for why it works. So why is it that the arts help content stick? My colleague Stephanie recently said to me, I don't know why it works. What I know is that the arts help make the material more accessible to my students. She's right, but it turns out we do know why. The answer lies in the robust neural connection that arts integration creates in students' developing brains. Briefly, when we learn, our brain cells called neurons stretch and extend, growing to join one another, connecting one thought to another. Connecting new knowledge to existing schema is not just a metaphor. It really happens, and we can see it in this time-lapse video. This is actual footage of neurons growing to meet one another, made by Alfred Bonson at the University of Pittsburgh. Our thinking and memory is a product of the web of these neurons. When the neurons are linked, and they can link to up to 10,000 others, they signal for information to flow from one to the next. But if you call on them at the same time, like an art thought with a math or reading thought, they fire together, and the actual neural net gets stronger, making it more likely to become a part of long-term memory. Bottom line, when your students fire art neurons with other neural connections, their brain cells remember more. Cool, huh? So bring on the A for arts and help those neurons synchronize to deepen learning. This summit is all about doing arts integration with artistic integrity so that whether it is dance, music, visual arts, theater, or media arts, the arts are treated as real learning, not just a forgettable funsies project. You will learn about options for students creating art, presenting art, performing art, responding to art, or connecting art with the world around them. Authentic art learning that focuses on real artistic skills will ensure that art solidifies thinking about your core subjects as well as the art subjects. Every session you'll see today is designed to help you do just that, from adaptable classroom strategies to full-blown arts integration lessons and assessments. Part of that is aligning standards and assessing equitably. I want to talk to you later about that assessment piece when we move from STEM to STEAM. In all of these, we'll aim for a strong arts A. No matter how you bring in the art, we want to make sure that the A, art, is authentic, purposeful, and reinforcing. I'm eager to show you how this can work in STEAM in particular. So right now, I'm going to dig into moving from STEM to STEAM. This section will be especially relevant for you if you already teach STEM, but even if you don't, I recommend you download my planning handout and try it with your non-STEM content. The handout will help you reimagine any lesson for strong, authentic arts integration. Let me show you how. We just learned how arts integration helps students' brains make stronger, longer-lasting neural connections that can be used later. STEAM teaching, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, works the same way. With STEAM teaching, we are bringing arts into STEM content, making connections that would normally not be part of the same neural network. It is likely that your students have seen connections between STEM and the arts. We can support student learning by not talking them out of those connections, and instead, intentionally showing how those connections are indeed both STEM and the arts. They're STEAM. Because brains vary, The inclusion of arts in STEM can open the door for students who are naturally interested in the arts or who simply prefer variety in learning. Forging STEAM connections in meaningful ways is important. Teaching STEAM integrated lessons should not sacrifice your STEM content, and it should not minimize what the arts are or waste the opportunity for real art learning. We need to make sure that the content we're teaching and our expectations for learning have strong bonds as well. An easy way to ensure equal emphasis on STEM and art is to require your STEAM lessons assessments to lean equally on your arts and on your STEM objectives. If you are teaching a lesson with some arts in it, but without an assessment, then you're likely doing an arts enhancement, but not arts integration. Your STEAM lessons assessment should evaluate the STEM learning and the arts learning. So what arts content do you want students to learn? You don't have to be an art expert here. You're already a STEM teacher. The National Arts Council's Core Arts Standards, linked on the handout, are a wonderful resource for finding art standards written as student outcomes for each grade. It can be useful to lean into the 4 categories that the National Arts Council uses to separate artistic practices in each art discipline. And they are creating, performing or presenting, responding, and connecting to the real world. If you want students to look at colors in art as related to light, say, then browse the responding to visual art standards. If you see a synergy between patterns and writing music, maybe browse the creating music standards. If you want students to think about the motion of a dancer to help learn anatomy, browse the performing dance standards. Write these down. You have the option to integrate creating art, performing or presenting art, responding to art, and connecting art to the real world. From there, you can generate a heap of connections. In STEM, your assessment might be on a process or a practice, a concept, or a piece of content. The assessment itself might be a formative reflection, a single question, a test, a presentation, a pitch, an infographic, or a paper. Any of these can include art. Picking an art standard to assess will remind you that the arts are more than just a cute addition here. You are designing a co-learning opportunity to cement the STEM by making it STEAM. Now, when you design your assessment, the art standard will be as significant as the STEM content standards. You don't have to start from scratch to move from STEM to STEAM. I'm going to show you a process to call in the strong arts assessments to your existing STEM objectives, activities, and assessments. Open your handout PDF. We'll go through it step by step. We'll start with an existing STEM activity. If you're not sure about how to do STEM, that's okay. You can start with one content area at a time and expand from there. Next, list your existing STEM objectives. Continuing down the page, list the assessment that you usually do to assess those objectives. And then, how would you teach the STEM activity alone? I encourage you to pause this video now and try this backwards design process for yourself. Come back when you have the 3 STEM boxes on the left of your handout filled in. Now we're going to work on a strong arts component. If you already have an idea for an arts integration that you think will be awesome, write it down at the top and work from there. If you don't see a connection to arts yet, I recommend seeking an artistic context for which the science, technology, or math connection is evident. I find it useful to think about art pieces, art processes, and art movements. Think about the full range of arts, from visual art to dance to media art, from theater to music. What would you want students to learn about that art? And what do you think is interesting about it? When in doubt, contact your art teacher and ask them how they see art connecting to or responding to your STEM topic at hand. Next, browse your grade level's art standards for producing or performing, creating, responding, or connecting to the arts. Choose a standard that will support your students in their STEM learning and in learning something new and appropriate about the arts. Try to find a standard with a verb in it that matches the Bloom's taxonomy of the verb in your STEM standards. Higher levels are more likely to support both STEM and arts learning. Use that language to create an assessment. If the standard says create, then use the word create in your arts objective and assessment. If the standard says respond, then use the word respond in your objectives and assessments. Look side to side here between your STEM objectives and your art objectives. Can one be done without the other? If they can be done in isolation and really don't support one another, then you have a cupcake. The icing is good and the cake is good, but they're good separately. A more integrated approach will involve interdependence. The STEM lesson will support understanding the art, and the art will support learning the STEM. Pause and do a quick cupcake check when you get to this point. Next, plan an arts assessment that would target the standard you just identified. The performance objectives in the National Core Art Standards will help you here. Last big step, putting both sides together in one assessment. The assessment should actually look for STEM mastery and for that art standard mastery. How will you know if the students learned the STEM objective, and how will you know if the students learned the art objective? Since they are both your goals, then make sure that you allow students to demonstrate growth and/or mastery of them both. Bam, you have your assessment. Now, restate the original STEAM idea or your new one in one smooth statement that includes both STEM and a strong arts A. There's your STEAM lesson. How about an example? Let's imagine that I saw a great idea for fifth graders to do a soap and milk art experiment. I saw this online, and I think it can be a meaningful STEAM activity. I already know my STEM objectives, but I'm not sure where the real authentic art is. So let's use the planning tool. My STEM objectives for fifth grade are for students to learn chemical and physical properties. Then I would usually assess that with a quiz in which students identify whether the effects of burning, cutting, mixing represent chemical or physical property changes. I want to make this a STEAM lesson by adding the elements of color. And I'm thinking about a painting that I know by Morris Louis that reminds me of this experiment. But just having students note that colors are beautiful and can come from science is not STEAM by itself. I want them to know that chemistry and art might relate, but how? So let's lean on the arts A here. I need an assessment that will make sure students have learned more than just superficial thinking about art awareness and colors. So I'm turning to the creating standards for visual art. A relevant creating standard for fifth grade is explore and invent art making techniques and approaches. Inventing art making techniques is exactly what I want them to do in the milk and food coloring experiment. Now, how could I assess that? I could ask students to reflect on how this process compares to other art making and color mixing they've done in arts class. How could I get them to practice that? Well, I might ask them to try to make certain shapes or color combinations, or to make an original Morris Louis. Now I have a lesson. Students will explore and invent art making techniques using physical and chemical properties. They will turn in a photograph of their work. They will caption the photograph with a description of the chemical or physical processes that occurred in their soap and milk, and describe the art making practice they invented. Give this a try for yourself. You've already listed your STEM objectives, assessment, and activities. Get in there and brainstorm a potential arts integration and put that morsel of an idea at the top. Think about your objectives, including what do you want them to learn about arts, and find a correlating art standard to assess. Provide the opportunity to learn about that art standard and then combine everything into an integrated STEAM plan. When you finish, you should feel confident that you planned a strong STEAM lesson with fidelity to the arts, because your lesson assesses an art standard right alongside the STEM standards. Congratulations, you're really doing it. I hope to see you again, and I thank you for your time. You can find more examples for various grade levels and STEM subjects on page 2 of your handout and on my website at www.edukatey.com. Enjoy the summit and be in touch if you have any questions about arts integration and STEAM.